All right. Welcome everyone to the Rubin Community Workshop 2024 and the introduction to Rubin session. My name is Yumi Choi. I'm chairing this session. I'm a scientific staff at NOAA Lab and a member of the Rubin Community Science team. Okay, so this session provides an overview of the Rubin LSST communication methods, telescope, camera, survey strategy, data management, education and public outreach, and science collaborations, and finally resources for anyone new to Rubin, as well as those needing a refresher. The session channel, Slack channel, is day one, month 10:30 intro to Rubin. So please join the channel if you haven't so. And the Gloria here will monitor the Slack channel and the Zoom chat for the session. Okay, so I'm speaking. And before passing the mic to the first speaker of the session, I'm gonna go over some important and useful information for the workshop. So this is a little bit of redundant from the plenary this morning, but it's important and the Rubin value those things. So the first reminder is the code of conduct. The full code of conduct is available on either on the workshop website or via this QR code. And harassment and unprofessional conduct is not permitted at all during the workshop. So if you experience or witness any violations of our code of conduct, please contact those RCW's code of conduct contacts, Rampol, John, and Agnes. And if you see those stickers on people's name tag on the right upper corner, please check their contact comfort level. It will tell you like handshake's okay, the fist bump is okay, or I need space. So please respect that. And then we're encouraged to wear a mask if you want to, but the wearing a mask is totally up to you. And we ask everyone to respect others' choices. And if you have any COVID-related questions or reports, then please use this confidential email, rubin2024-covid@list.lsst.org. All this slide is up in the linked in the session webpage, so you don't need to jot it down. All the information it's available there. And then if you someone is wearing this cool-looking pin, which I don't have, unfortunately, and indicating low social battery, then just give them some space to regain their social energy. Okay, so the second reminder about the virtual participation. So this Rubin Community Workshop 2024 is fully hybrid. For the virtual participants, please mute while not speaking. And in-person participants should speak to the room microphone for the Q&As. So everyone can hear your question, including the people remote. And if that's impossible, then just the session chair should repeat the questions to make sure remote people can hear what is said. Also, there's a good, the Slack is a good place to post your Q&As and have follow-up discussions, etc. And in Zoom, please use the chat to request to unmute and ask your question by yourself, or type your questions so Gloria can read it loud for you. In the Zoom, the raise hands feature is not preferred because it can be easily missed during the session. So Slack might be a better place to post your question. And then these are the key workshop activities. Bless you. And all sessions are open to everyone and will be recorded. So as we had just, there are daily morning plenaries from 9 to 10 a.m. Today's one was about the Rubin status updates, and tomorrow's plenary is on LSST Discovery Alliance lightning stories, flash talks. And Wednesday one is on LSST science collaborations. And the Thursday one is on the Rubin research spotlights. The Friday one is on Rubin project keynote. And following daily morning plenaries, there will be parallel breakout sessions, three parallel breakout sessions starting at 10:30 a.m., 2 p.m., 4 p.m. every day. And each focuses on science, software, EPO, or DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the breakouts with broader impacts on the right upper corner are listed there. And for example, there are like career pathways for students, Rubin undergraduate network, accessibility project Jamboree. So please check them out in the agenda. And on Wednesday, 4 p.m., there will be on conference. So please suggest your topic on the board near the check-in desk and the post area and the SUSB. And then the topic and room assignment will be assigned on Wednesday. So you just go to the room for the topic you like, and then just join the discussion from there. And then the brown bag lunch sessions will taking place every day between 12:45 to 1:45. You can either bring your lunch or eat first and then join the discussion in the Trinity, the room Trinity. And then the poster session, we'll have two sets of posters. So first set of the posters will be up all day, Monday and Tuesday. And then second set will be up all day, Wednesday and Thursday. And then the poster presenters for the first set, please stand by your posters during these today and tomorrow's the afternoon break so people can visit your poster. And please do so the same thing on Wednesday, Thursday for the second set of poster presenters. And the reception will be on Tuesday, 6 p.m. at Sky Cafe, followed by the star party after the reception. Star party social events were observing the LSST-centric objects with small telescopes, so it'll be fun. And then the Rubin Research Bites, or RRBs, is a way to a virtual and then informal way to share any Rubin-related work at any level. So please visit this page for the instructions post. It's not moving this. Fencing. Sorry about that. Oh, yeah. And then the late breaking news, if weather permits, tomorrow at 8:15 a.m., there will be a virtual summit tour live from Cerro Patron, same set as the plenaries. So there's no bad weather broadcast at the moment, so this will be likely happening. So please come to any rooms by 8:15 for the virtual tour of the summit. All right. Then finally, the resources for science. If you're interested in to learn about these, please consider going to the community science tool for learning support session on Thursday, 2 p.m. in Redwood. In this session, the Rubin community science team will provide an overview of the resources available for the scientific analysis of the LSST data products. And there will be a chance to provide your feedback on what support you will need to do the LSST science in the future. And regardless of going that particular session, please go to those two sites and then get an account on the Rubin Science Platform as well as the Rubin Community Forum. So those are where you're gonna analyze your LSST data and also get support from the Rubin team. Right. So is there any questions for my slides? If not, we're going to move on to the first talk. Our first speaker is Kristen Metzger, who will be talking about the communications.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Awesome. My name is Kristen Metzger, and I work in the communications and also in the education and public outreach section of the project, which you'll hear more about from Clare Higgs a little bit later on. But I want to talk to you a bit about how we on the project try to communicate with the huge landscape of different partners and institutions and scientists and people who are all involved with the project. So I wanted to ask just really quickly, how many of you here today are relatively new to the Rubin project, haven't had a lot of exposure before? Awesome. And I imagine there are probably some people in the room who have been with the project for a little while and are here just for a refresher or because things are confusing. And I will tell you that it is not you, it's Rubin. Rubin is a very rich and diverse ecosystem, and it can be extraordinarily confusing. And we here at Communications are trying to make that easier for all of you, and it's challenging. I'm presenting today on behalf of Rampal Gill, who you heard from earlier this morning. She's our communications manager, and she's the one who sends out most of the emails. But please do, if you have questions after this presentation, which I'm sure you will, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. I'll have some information on how to do that. But we want to make sure that you guys get what you need. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about our name, the Vera C. Rubin Observatory. I never know where to start. I confuse myself. So we were originally LSST for many, many years, and were renamed in December of 2019 to the Vera C. Rubin Observatory. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory will be conducting the Legacy Survey of Space and Time. And if you have questions about whether that acronym was made up after the fact, it was. It is the backronym for LSST, so that we could preserve the legacy of the name that people were very attached to for obvious reasons. This telescope inside the Rubin Observatory is the Simony Survey Telescope, named after the Simony family. Charles Simony gave a generous gift to get started with construction before we had public funding. And then there's the LSST camera, which also keeps the LSST name. That is the camera that was built right here at SLAC, which you'll be hearing more about in this presentation. We have a name use guide for when you are writing or talking about Rubin and want to figure out how to say things. And it is on the project.lsst.org website under documents. There's parts of the project website that are for project members only, and there are parts that are public to everyone, and that is a public one. So come back to find this slide later and find that link if you have questions, or just reach out to us for any specific questions you have. But the most important thing, and I probably should have said this first, is that we really, really strongly encourage people not to use VRO as an acronym, as tempting as it might be in this acronym-laden industry. We really want to honor Vera Rubin. She was an amazing person. We're very proud to be named after her. And we really do encourage people not to acronymize her name. So please help us out with that. When you see it, if you have the opportunity to politely ask people to use Rubin Observatory as the short version of our name instead of VRO, we would very much appreciate it. We do our best to reach out to publications when they say VRO, and sometimes it works, sometimes not. We'll keep doing it. We'll get there eventually. Okay, so you might have noticed there are a lot of acronyms in this space, and it can be very challenging to remember them all. Nobody knows them all, but there's a super awesome resource that I think a lot of people forget exists. There is a glossary, and that also exists on the LSST. Well, it's in a confusing place, isn't it? So all the links are there. You can find them. But that glossary has like every acronym that we've got in it, and it's kept up to date. We have a very, very committed team of people who keep all those files up to date, who add new acronyms as we have them. But here's the thing, very recently, and I don't know who made this, but thank you, there's a Slack glossary bot where if you put in /glossary and then type the term you're looking for or the acronym, it'll tell you, and it'll even translate it for you. So I encourage you to try that out. I've had a lot of luck with that. It's been pretty cool. Okay, so we have a central website. Things have changed over the course of the last few years, and they're about to change again. So I apologize for giving you what's going to be outdated information very soon. But we have a website at rubinobservatory.org. Very easy to find. A lot of people, particularly people who've been on the project for a long time, are still going to lsst.org. That was our old website. It tries to redirect you very aggressively to this new website. And this is where we have all kinds of great information. It is designed for the public. It was built by the Education and Public Outreach team. And so it has a very public-friendly interface, but there's one extremely important tab on there, and it's called For Scientists. And in that section, our science community can find all kinds of resources. Right now, that link takes you back to lsst.org because that's where all that content lives. We're in the process of migrating it all to this website, so it'll all be in one space. So when in doubt, go to the rubinobservatory.org website, go to the For Scientists section, and you'll see there's all kinds of important information that you can get to from there. We do a lot with social media. This started out as a communications activity, and it's sort of migrated into the education and public outreach space. But either way, it doesn't really matter who's doing it. It's usually Steph up there in the audience. But we have a bunch of different accounts on pretty much every platform that you can think of, and then some. We've sort of reserved our domain on a few when Twitter fell apart a little bit on us. So we've got a lot going on out there. We do encourage you to not just follow us, but also engage, chat with us. We're trying to make those very vibrant and sort of engaging and two-way conversations. But you can also pick up on quite a lot of news with social media. So we do encourage you to follow us on all those different platforms. And then, of course, there's the community forum, which is particularly important for our science community. That's the place where you can find all kinds of discussion. There are some official announcements from the project, but then you're also encouraged to post your own questions and to talk amongst yourselves and work things out. And it really helps because we have a very, very, very broad science community and not a lot of people to answer all the questions. So that community is going to be really important too. We have a few other channels. We are putting out a bi-weekly news digest, and that gives sort of construction updates and just kind of very high-level news about Rubin Observatory. So if you'd like to subscribe to that, you can send a blank email to that email address, and I think you just have to, I don't know, send the email and then you get something back. Thank you. And then this email address here, which I wish it were a little bit shorter and easy to remember, but it's communicationsteam@lists.lsst.org. Feel free to email us at any time. Those emails actually get turned into JIRA tickets. So we do respond to them, but we can also follow up on something if it turns into a longer conversation. But we are very eager to hear from you and to know how we can help you. Please do talk to us this week. I think all 4 of the people in that picture are here this week and are happy to chat with you and answer any questions that you have. Hey, that was it. I finished on time.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks, everybody. If you have questions, I'll be around.
Maybe we have a time to take 1 or 2 questions.
So clear, there are no questions. I've done my job for today.
Right. If you have any questions later, then you can post them slide and Kristen will monitor. Right. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Our next speaker is Tiago Ribeiro, who's presenting from the Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your the event. From Kristen reaction, I imagine the majority of the people there are new to Rubin. Am I right? Can someone confirm? No?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, just want to make sure that that was the case. So I'm gonna talk about telescope and site. So we're the department that's in charge of during construction of the entire observatory. So we're building both the site in Chile at the summit and the base. At the summit, we have the two telescopes, the big one, the Simony Survey Telescope, as Kristen mentioned in her presentation, and we have a small one, the Auxiliary Telescope. The Auxiliary Telescope is in charge of, it's part of the calibration system, but it's in itself, it's its own telescope as well. We try to make all the part regarding controlling the telescopes as similar as possible. So both telescopes are driven by a scheduler. So during at night, they will be automatically driven by this component called the scheduler. Decides where it needs to go, where the telescope needs to go, what type of observation it's going to take. For the Simony, for the main telescope, well, the Simony telescope, the majority is the survey observations. And the Auxiliary telescope, we're still undecided on the strategy, but it's going to be doing slitless spectroscopy, either following where the big one, the Simony telescope is, or are we going to go for a different strategy that you still try to design. So we have a lot of acronyms on our system, and while Kristen was presenting, I was wondering how much of those are from telescope inside, because we have a lot of scientists and software developer on our team, and people that love to create new acronyms and some smart ones, some not so smart. So we have in the past we have a lot of main telescope referring to the Simony telescope. We're trying to rebrand that now. That Simony, the telescope got named after Simony. Still internally, we refer a lot to main telescope. So anytime you're talking to someone on the team and you see us talking about main telescope, just think about the Simony Survey Telescope. It's the history is really hard to change, and sometimes we still use the old name. Internally, we most refer to the main telescope. So telescope inside is we do the hardware. We are in charge of building the hardware, also the software for the observatory. So we have some internal acronyms like SAL, which is the service abstraction layer. It's a part of the control system, the software that handles the communication between the components. The system is broken down in really small components, and they have to talk to each other. They use the SAL as the middleware, as the communication layer. So usually, if you are interacting with the observatory, sometimes like trying to understand how an observation is being done or how the data is being taken, sometimes you see us referring to SAL if there is an issue, the communication issue between components. Is very common for us to be talking about this. The EFD is another component that is very much out there. People talk about it a lot when trying to understand, the observations, what we are doing. This is the engineering facility database. So basically, every single component of the system, they publish their telemetry and everything we operate, how we tell the components to do their operations. It's all stored in the EFD. So later, if we want to see if there was an issue during an observations and we want to understand what was happening, we usually go to the EFD and we can look at what the components were doing at the time, what information they were sending to each other, and how they were interacting. So it's very common that you hear about the EFD when interacting with the Rubin data, even if only at the data. If it's something is missing on the data, you most often will find the information in the EFD. Other acronyms very common to talk about is the CSC. Those are how we refer. That's how we refer to the components of the system. So each component that's part of the control system, we call them CSCs. That's commandable SAL components. And again, SAL there, it's the service abstraction layer. So sometimes we're talking about, you know, the TMA or the Simony telescope, and there's a specific CSC that we're talking about. The scheduler is also, you know, a component that's very much user-facing. That's where the survey strategy is realized. So later on, there will be a presentation about the survey strategy. That algorithm that encodes the survey strategy is run by the scheduler. So the scheduler, it knows how to talk to the control system. It knows how to request observations, and most often when we are talking about how we're gonna execute an observation, we have to mix the survey strategy with the scheduler. And sometimes it's hard to understand where one starts and the other begins. So for people that are not familiar to the system, sometimes you have to, okay, this is on the survey strategy, this is on the CSC. So it's good to understand that, you know, that's a component that it crosses some borders across the project. We also have LOVE on the summit. So LOVE is the LSST Observing Visualization Environment. So if you ever go to the summit or are interacting with the system in any way, even to monitor some telemetry or see the state of the system, you open LOVE on your browser. So that's the monitoring system and the control hub for the observatory. We have the calibration system, and as I mentioned, the Oxtel, it's its own telescope, but it's part of the calibration system. We're gonna use Oxtel to take data that will help us calibrate the data from the survey. There's an in-dome calibration system as well. So both Oxtel has its own calibration system. Oxtel is part of the calibration system, and the Simony telescope has its own internal calibration system. So all that is part of the telescope inside purview. And we also have the coating plane. That's the part that we use to coat the mirrors. And if you can go to the next slide. So that's the showing a small diagram of how the optics work. So the optics on the telescope is pretty compact. I think the Rubin is very famous for this compact system. Instead of having one primary mirror, the primary mirror actually has two mirrors cast in it. There's the primary and the tertiary. They are on the same surrogate. And then the secondary is on top to bring the light from the primary to the secondary, and then the tertiary, and then to the camera. So this allows us to have a very compact and stiff structure, which allows us to also move really fast. So the telescope, if you look at it, almost feels like a tank. It's really stiff structure. It moves really fast. And it's a combination of this optics, that's compact optics, and the physical structure, stiff structure, that allows us to move fast and accomplish the survey strategy. So if you ever see the telescope moving, it's almost scary of how fast it goes from one point to another. We can go to the next slide. And so this is a picture that I showed also last year. This is, I think, is the most complete form that we had a telescope so far. If I was going to show a picture of the telescope right now, it's kind of in a step back, because we removed the primary to install the mirror. That time we had a surrogate, so it's a piece of metal. We were testing the TMA and the support system, the telescope, the mirror support system. So that's kind of what it looks like when it's fully assembled. And if you look up at M2, it's that white thing at the top. That's just a surrogate as well, a mass simulator, actually. So again, we were testing the mount and the support system for the M1 and 3 at this stage. And my final slide, if you can skip. Oh, it's not. Oh, there you go. So this is kind of what's happening right now at the summit. Or a week ago, we were doing operations rehearsals. So we had the idea was to simulate what was going to happen during the commissioning night. So even though we branded it as operations rehearsal, we were emulating a commissioning night. So we had people at the summit controlling the telescope, and we had people remotely helping out to understand what's going on, the issues and things like that. So we don't have a lot of space at the summit, so we rely a lot on Zoom and remote connectivity to help out. So you have an understanding how things happen at night. So we have the control system running up where people can interact. Those screens that you can see there on the right are from Love, and the other pictures are people sitting around the control room trying to understand what's going on, and people remotely trying to help them out. And I might have got over my time. That's it. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be around, hopefully.
Thank you, Tiago. Any questions? Just one question for Tiago over Zoom or Slack? No? Oh, okay. Then our next speaker is Aaron Roodman. We're talking about the camera.
Okay. Hi, Aaron Roodman. I'm Deputy Director of the Observatory for Construction, currently head of the camera project. So I'll tell you about the camera. Let's start with the pieces. When you hear people describe different elements, they might be referring to one of these things. I won't list them all, but I guess I want you to take away the camera actually is chock filled with equipment. It has all of the components that most any astronomical camera would have. Shutters, filters, a cryostat, focal plane, lenses, power supplies, etc. So this exploded view shows you all of that. There are also multiple refrigeration systems that run the camera. Those are actually going to be mounted underneath the telescope. Those are shown in the lower right. You hear people talk about cold or cryo. Those are the two different systems inside the cryostat that are used to cool both the CCDs, that's cryo, and the electronics, that's cold. One of the unique features of the camera is we do have a lot of electronics in the vacuum. Okay, so by the numbers, and if you want to remember a few numbers, these are good ones to know. The field of view is 10 square degrees. Focal plane has 3.2 gigapixels. We are in the Guinness Book of World Record as the largest astronomical camera. The camera's gone, so there's no tour, but on the wall of our clean room over in the lab, we have our certificate from the Guinness people. You might be interested in the pixels. They're 10 microns square. That's plate scale is 0.2 arc seconds per pixel. The focal plane is divided into sub-assemblies. The jargon for those is raft. There are two kinds of rafts. There are the science rafts, and I'll show pictures in a sec, that have the sensors used for imaging. There are 21 science rafts, each with 9 CCDs. They're 16 megapixel CCDs. There are also 4 corner rafts. Each one of those has 2 guide sensors and 1 split wavefront sensor that's used for the active optics system. As I said, the electronics are in the vacuum. We can read out the camera in 2 seconds, roughly. It's really, we're operating at 2.4 seconds for more complicated reasons and better performance. There are 3 lenses, which Tiago just showed you in the ray diagram, and 6 filters. So the filter set is called UGRIZY, which maybe is familiar to you. Note only 5 can be stored in the camera at any time. So a few times per month, one of the filters, mostly the U and Y, will get swapped as needed. And the shutter is fast, 0.9 seconds to open or close. Okay, some photos. Looks like we don't have that one video. All right. These are photos from here at SLAC over the last year or two of different pieces of the assembly. It's hard from the engineering, from the CAD models to get a grip of what we're talking about. So these pictures maybe do a better job. In the upper left, you can see the cryostat. So that's the big aluminum vessel. You can see the third lens, L3, mounted on it. That cryostat is getting mounted into the camera body. Next, you see the shutter being installed, right? So it's a giant shutter with about a 80 centimeter diameter hole in it. The next picture is the L1, L2 lenses. Those, you're looking at them from the side, so you can't see the glass, and they had covers anyway, but that's them being installed. You can see two of the legs of the hexapod that connect to the camera body. Next, the filter loader. So that's that big thing being craned. That's what we'll do a couple times a month. That will get brought over to the camera, mounted on the telescope to swap filters. There are the filters themselves, 80 centimeters diameter. And that's all 6 of them mounted. The videos, this one is the shutter. And let's see if, this is the filter exchange system. Trust me, it's okay. So the filter exchange is not particularly fast given the complicated design. The filters are stored around the cryostat and get moved in 3 dimensions. That motion takes about 90 seconds. It may take up to 30 seconds to move the rotator to 0 degrees. We could only exchange the filter at 0 degrees. So 2 minutes have been allotted in all the planning and requirements for this process. Okay. Let's see if I can get to the next page. Okay. Now, maybe a few more details about the focal plane. Since if you're looking at images, that's what you'll be looking at. There's a picture of one of the 2 kinds of CCDs. So on this photograph, I've got labels. So you may have noticed there are 2 beautiful blue colors in the focal plane. That's due to the different anti-reflective coatings from the 2 manufacturers. The outside lighter blue are ITL STA 3800s. The inner darker blue are E2V CCD 250s. If you actually would like a detailed understanding of why they're that color, I had a poster at the sensor meeting earlier this spring taking our QE measurements and predicting the colors, and it matches quite well. So it's all the reflection off the focal plane, which is 1 minus the quantum efficiency. The science rafts are shown, and then you can see the corner rafts. And you can see the split sensor is the wavefront sensor, and then the 2 in the corner are the guiders. These are some nice photographs of assembly. One thing you might notice in this bottom, the gaps between both CCDs and adjacent rafts is only 0.5 millimeter. We worked extremely hard to minimize the dead space in the focal plane. The numbering, if you ever look at raw images, or if you ever care about where your object is located on the focal plane, you might need to consult the numbering system. There are 2 different ones. The ones you will probably encounter is just 0 to 204, and 0 to 189 are the science CCDs. There is a name, something like R22S22, that was the camera's name. And I've indicated where those are. The other thing that if you really are looking deeper at the data, you might need to care about are the amplifiers. So to read out CCDs like this in 2 seconds, they're highly multiplexed. So they have 16 amplifier sections. They have the 0 to 7 and 10 to 17 numbering system as indicated. Okay. That, let's see. Okay, and just to conclude, I have 2 minutes, good. We actually have a lot of calibration images, should those be interest. I think we can work to make those accessible to a wider group. Camera fully assembled, ready to go, it was tested here. It was shipped in May. You saw in Bob's talk this morning some things from the shipment. We're bringing it online in the clean room. We have some time to this late summer and early fall to check it out, and kind of in the October, November timeframe will be on the telescope. So I could take some questions. Everyone's shy. Okay, well, you could catch me in a coffee break and ask questions. There are a number of camera people around since this is our home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So by design, this session is new,
Right.
to new faces. So they were learning a lot, I hope. All right, thanks, Aaron.
Okay,
And our next speaker is Eric Neilsen. We'll talk about the survey strategy.
Well, so gathered as you gathered from the earlier talks, the survey strategy is the question of exactly what exposures you take at what time, including things like what the filters and so forth. And this covers timescales of even the minute to minute, what exposure when, to sort of strategy also covers year to year and the whole thing. So it's the survey strategy is a very general, complete picture of what is observed at what time science-wise. So the baseline survey strategy is the reference strategy towards which any proposed changes or measurements of metrics and so forth refer. So the baseline strategy will not always be exactly what we think is our current picture if we're running a little behind in doing the simulations or implementing recommendations, but it's usually pretty close and a pretty recent idea of this is what we think we will actually do. For any baseline simulation, there is a piece of code that defines what runs it. So it can be run on different weather realizations, for example. And there is also actual executions of it that you can go look at and see, okay, under the baseline, under some set of weather conditions, this is what it did at what time. And you can run metrics on that and see what it would do. In the baseline survey strategy, there are several different components. One of them is the wide, fast, deep component, which is taking the bulk of the time. It covers most of the area as well. It is a median about 800 visits in a typical weather realization. And it has it tries to observe in pairs of visits per night. And it gets hit, the available area at any given time gets hit at roughly a three-day cadence. In addition, there are deep drilling fields shown here in yellow. Those are areas of the sky that are hit much more often. We're doing more fine time domain science and also getting much deeper images on those sections of the sky. The fields are chosen to coincide with other surveys, and so there'll be an abundance of data on those fields, both from LSST and Moon Observatory and other science. Finally, there are mini surveys, which basically covers a small fraction of time doing everything else. And they include things like the dusty plane of the galaxy shown in the sort of purpley color, the North Ecliptic Spur, which is the NES, covering solar system, designed for capturing solar system objects. So the process of defining and evolving the survey strategy is organizationally a little complicated. Starts with the astronomical community defining metrics, saying this is what we want to do. That gets fed into the survey scheduling team that runs the simulations, that writes the algorithm, runs the simulations, produces what are called opsim runs, which are collections of visits under given sets of weather conditions and so forth. Those get fed back into the astronomical community. The astronomical community can then feed their recommendations into the Survey Cadence Optimization Committee, which has representatives from the various science groups on it, and anyone can feed suggestions into that, not just people from the official science collaborations. And this is the group that actually makes the ultimate decisions on what the strategy is going to be. They make recommendations. The recommendations get fed back into the survey scheduling team to further develop the scheduler and run additional simulations. Those simulations then get evaluated and fed back to the astronomical community as well. So it's a loop that goes through the astronomical from the schedule. Well, the committee generates simulation suggestions. The scheduling team actually implements them, evaluates metrics provided by the astronomical community. The astronomical community then provides feedback through the science cadence optimization committee. One important piece of this is MAF, the metric analysis framework, which is code-wise how the community feeds information back into the scheduling team. So it's a way for different science collaborations to define what it is they want in a way that lets the scheduling team evaluate simulations every time without having to feed the simulations back and forth to the community on a simulation by simulation basis. So I think that's what I have.
Mm-hmm. Eric, any questions? Oh.
Hi, the name is Akki and I'm postdoc in Roma. So from playing around with the baselines and with the deep drilling fields especially, I noticed that there's a dither in the pointing. So for example, when I go to Cosmos, I see that it's not the same array deck every time. And I was wondering the motivation behind this and basically what that does to the depth. For example, if I look at a metric that I have one depth for Cosmos, this is probably the deepest region, but it's not uniform, right?
Did you summarize that?
Yes. So in the deep drilling fields, I find the dither if I look at the baseline and for example, the telescope pointings in Cosmos, I found that there's slight dither in the position.
Yeah.
Yes. So the question was basically the motivation behind that, how to interpret it.
I think there are several motivations behind that. Some of it is to make sure that the objects do not fall into the filter gaps when you actually cover the entire field. And it's also making sure objects don't fall on the same piece of the detector every time. I think there's some additional motivations as well, but I don't remember.
Okay. What is the total area that is covered then after the dither? So it's not one LSST field of view, it's slightly more than
It's slightly more than that, and I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Maybe you can post that questions to Slack so someone who knows can answer to your question. Any other question? If not, can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
It's easy one. In the baseline map, I saw a hole in the collective plane survey area. What is the hole? You know? Yeah, the green hole.
Oh, the green hole.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure this hole right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if there's a specific motivation for it. The way the galactic plane WFD areas were defined were basically the galactic science working group specified we want these areas around these parts. And that may well be, it looks like there are three roughly circular areas. And when you add them, those circular areas just might not cover that little point there. So I don't think there's a specific motivation for let's avoid that. It's just, oh, we're doing these three areas and they don't happen to cover that.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's thank Eric again. Right. Our next speaker is Tris McCann. We're talking about the data management.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing? My name's Tris. I've been working with data management in Princeton for about the last year, and I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about all of the data that we have. So there's going to be a few things that you hear tossed around a lot. The first is the LSST science pipelines. That essentially refers to when we take an image, we do a bunch of processing, looking at the pixels, deciding where are the sources at? What's happening in the image? What do the pixels mean? How bright is everything? Where are they at? That's what we do with the science pipelines. If you just want to look at the data, if you're just interested in science, you don't have to deal with any of that. Even though I'm very passionate and it makes me sad, it's okay. You can just use the Rubin Science Platform, or the RSP for short. That is where you can do things like open up a Jupyter notebook, pull up some images, look at source tables, things like that. Okay, so when we take an image, what do we do with it? Well, they're stored digitally. We've got a bunch of pixels. We've got counts for how much flux we're getting from the different sources on the sky, but just pixels do not tell you what sources are. We have to analyze all the pixels. The very first thing that we do after we take an exposure is we send it to the prompt processing database, and we get prompt data products. There's a few different kinds of these. On the shortest time scales, during nights of observing, on the scale of like seconds or a minute, we'll get some alert streams where the wonderful data broker will say, here is something that is going right, or here is something that is going wrong, and the observing specialists should pay attention to it. If everything's going right, we get some later prompt data products that take on the scale of hours to days. These are things like difference image analysis, which I'll go into a lot more detail later, that give us some interesting information about what's different about all of the exposures that we're taking in a time sequence. Some of the most exciting things, though, are on the scale of years, up to 10 years. Those are our data release products. That will have all of the visits that we do, all the exposures, all of the coads that we have, all of the data tables that say what the sources are, where they're at, how bright they are, such and such. And you can access all of those on the Rubin Science Platform. There's a lot of acronyms here. If that's a little bit overwhelming for you, like it was for me a year ago, that's okay. You can look at the slides again after I'm done and review everything. Again, the Rubin Science Platform, just as a last little explanation, you can look at all the images. You could even, if you wanted to, if you really wanted to, what I would really love and make me happy is if you pulled up some of the science pipelines pieces and examined how we process everything. That's also possible on there. All right, so I talked about difference imaging, some of our day scale prompt processing products. We've got a lovely little cartoon image here. So if you take two different exposures, you might say, what's different between them? And your naked eye might not be able to tell you exactly what the differences are. So imagine that we've got this first exposure on the left. 30 seconds later, we take another one. And you might be able to see if you're in the conference room or on Zoom. Maybe you can't, but you might notice there's a little blob. What's the blob? Well, if you want a clear review of it, you can take the pixel data, subtract the numbers for the counts, the fluxes, and get this new difference image on the far right. And that shows that there is indeed a blob. What is the blob? Well, it could be a transient source. It could be a solar system object. It could be some other new interesting thing that we don't know about. And you can examine what these blobs are. And these are called difference image sources, or DIA sources, DIA objects, lots of acronyms. But it's just when you subtract the image, what's different. The longer time scale, the data release processing, there's a lot of jargon here that gets used. It's really important to know. The first bit of it is a visit. I've already said a visit. What's a visit? A visit is just when you take the camera and you visit an area of the sky, you take an exposure. Just having that image might not tell you everything you want to know. So you get a CalExp. My brain always thinks calibrated exposure. Maybe that's a name that is familiar to you. But that will be a processed visit. So we have some algorithms that will look through the images, look through the pixels and say, that looks like a star, that looks like something else, that looks like something you should pay attention to. And it's released as a data table with an accompanying image that you can look at. But the visits are cool. But what's cooler is when you take all the visits and you stack them together to get a deeper image with even more information, that's a coad. You might also hear a co-addition image. This is just all the visits stacked on top of each other to get brighter, deeper looking images. Those are really, really beautiful, which you can view on where? The Rubin Science Platform. If you remember just a moment ago, Eric was showing this big photo of the number of visits at different places across the celestial sphere. If you were to try to store all of the coads from all across the entire survey, your computer would probably crash because computers have finite memory. So we have to choose how we're going to split up our coads across the sky. The default unit that we use for co-addition is a tract, which is roughly on the order of like a square degree tract. Yeah, it's just a large image. That's about what you can load up in, say, a Jupyter notebook on the RSP. It'll have a wonderful image, and then it will have a big data table that shows all the sources of that tract. Tracts are also really, really big, though. I mean, a square degree has a lot of dense information. So we break that up into even smaller regions called patches. There's roughly 9 by 9 patches per tract. So very digestible for a computer. The different data catalogs that we have, I've been mentioning, we've got the images and then we have these source tables. A source table is like what you'd get for a CalExp image. You'd have a source table that tells you where all the sources are. The analog for that for a coad is an object table. Same thing, just a table with the different objects that are in the coad. And then something that I really love is the forced source catalog that we have. If you're looking at something really interesting, like perhaps a high redshift quasar, which I love, they're present in some photometry bands, but not in others. So you might not detect something in, say, the G photometry band that you do detect in like the Z photometry band. But you may want to know what's happening on the G end of things that I'm not seeing. Well, that's where we force the camera to look at this region where we've detected a fainter band. And we say, let's look at it in the brighter band anyway, and just see what we have. And it may be nothing, it may be something, it may be a little bit or a lot of it. But I like the forced source catalogs as well. If you want to learn more about any of these things, we've got some resources here on the right. There's pipelines.lsst.io, among other websites that you can visit this slide deck and look at. If you are super duper excited and want to right now look at some CalExps or some coads, you can find this link and go to the intro to the Rubin Science Platform that will tell you how can you load up the data, how can you find the catalogs, how can you find the images. If this is confusing, I'm going to be sitting over there at the front of the room. I will also be at the conference the whole week. And more importantly, I'll be at the Queer Social later at lunch if you want to come find me and talk about data. Again, my name's Tris. Love data management. Look at the data, look at the beautiful images. Thank you very much.
Chris, questions for Tris about data management.
Wait one moment for a microphone.
Hi, Easton Honecker, University of Delaware. A question about source versus object tables. Do the object tables contain the individual information from the different source tables or some form of averaged information?
It's the latter. Yeah, so if you want the information that we gather from a single visit or CalExp, that's the source table. If you want the co-addition version of that that takes in all of the visits, it gets a bit complicated, but yeah, it's the co-addition version is like the average essentially.
Thanks.
Sure.
One more question over there.
Hi, my name's Dan with LSST Discovery Alliance. I have a question about objects that are saturated with Rubin. I've heard some various estimates that Rubin will saturate between 16 and 18 magnitude. And I'm curious about if we have a transient, for example, that's saturated around that magnitude, will that also be put out in alerts for small telescopes around the world to do follow-ups?
I believe the answer is yes. I don't work in alert production. I'm on a different part of the DM team. So the answer is, in short, yes, but also I'm not entirely sure of the details of that.
Okay,
But I
thank you.
can find the people who do know the details.
Thanks.
Well, let's thank Chris again. Our next speaker is Clare Higgs, who will be talking about education and public outreach.
Hi, everybody. Am I audible at the back? Awesome. So I am Clare Higgs. I am the astronomer on our education and public outreach team. Kristen mentioned a couple things about our communications, but the EPO team is really focused on bringing Rubin to the public. So a little introduction. So this is our mission statement here for the team, that we provide online data-driven experiences that are accessible and approachable, adding real-world context and opportunities for people to engage with Rubin Observatory and explore with the universe. As I'm sure you are all aware that Rubin is very exciting, very cool, but very complicated with a lot of data. And so we're really hoping to create ways and spaces and exciting opportunities for the public to participate in this amazing telescope and all the discoveries that are going to come out of the survey. And so we serve the non-specialist audiences out there, and we have really a variety of initiatives. So we have lots of resources for members of our community like yourselves who are doing outreach. We have these interactive data experiences. We have our wonderful public-facing website. We have education activities and support materials, and of course, the communication and social media. So I'll touch on a few of these in more detail and hopefully highlight ones that might be of particular interest to you all. So again, we have our website. This is great if you want to send it to a family member who has no idea about what you're doing and excited about. It's public, it's friendly, it's happy, it's a great place. We have a gallery that has all sorts of cool visuals. We have animated videos that explain both the telescope as well as some science. We have our formal education investigations. These are designed for kind of senior high school through first year undergraduate lectures, and they basically create ways of bringing Rubin data into the classroom without, needing to go to the RSP and any of that complexity. Of course, we have a strong social media presence, which Stephanie Deppa does a great job with. We have our science articles, building momentum, and we have this growing one-stop shop resource kit at ls.st resources. If you forget everything I say, if you go to that link, you might find what you were looking for. So that's the short version. Just to highlight a couple of these things that I mentioned, the gallery, it's got a lot of cool pictures as well as cool graphics. If you're ever giving a talk or wanting to explain Rubin, please go here, take everything. They've all got captions in English and Spanish. There's lots here for you. And we try and add lots more beautiful pictures regularly. The animated videos. So just to highlight the fact that there's some that are these animated ones. There's some that are real videos here. And again, we often include these as kind of explainers that have audio, but if you were doing a talk and you wanted to include them as well, they're there for you. And again, a great thing to send to family members who have no idea what you're working on. I'll mention our formal education investigations. These are the 6 investigations that we currently have going. We have more in the works and we're continuing to update these. Of course, they currently do not contain Rubin data, but they will soon. But they are full of real data and are ready to use. So if you are teaching or you know people who teach and who might be interested, they're amazing resources. And again, if you zoned out didn't pay attention to anything I said, either go to the observatory or to the resources link, and you should be able to find what we mentioned. Of course, we have many exciting things coming. And so some of the things I just wanted to highlight is we have a citizen science program. So we're hoping to support people in our community, scientists like you, create amazing projects and help the public participate in the discovery and science that Rubin will do. We have a session on Wednesday morning. If you're into citizen science, think you might be interested in citizen science, please come join us then. We have Orbit Viewer and Sky Viewer. These are interactive data explorers that we will be really excited to release once we have Rubin. Of course, this is the ways for the public to kind of experience that data. We don't want the public trying to understand the RSP. That's for, for our science community and not for the public. And of course, we have exciting plans for First Light, First Look, which we have a session on Thursday. So if you're interested about that, please pop by then. So just to wrap up, if you'd like to hear more about EPO at RCW, there's the citizen science session and the outreach session. And of course, we're around. So there's myself, there's Kristen, who you heard from earlier, there's Stephanie, who mentioned the short clips. We also have Alan and Fernanda. We'd all love to chat to you about anything. So please do come by. And there's lots of ways to reach us there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Any questions for Claire about education and public outreach? Sounds fun. Right, thanks. All right, let's move on to the next. So hope everyone are feeling a bit more familiar with Rubin now. And before letting you go, I'd like to summarize several ways to learn more about the Rubin. So first, join the science collaborations, as Alex mentioned. And number two, start using the Rubin Observatory Community Forum to ask any Rubin-related questions and get support from the team. And number three is check out the resources and publications. So for example, visit Rubin Observatory for Scientists website, or take a look at the Ivicic et al. 2019 paper, or there's a Rubin Observatory technical documents in the science book is available. And also, if you want to learn about the simulated data preview, zero data, and tutorials, please go to dp0.lsst.io. And of course, during the lunch and the coffee breaks, talk to the people. For example, next two slides are friendly faces. These are the Users Committee 2024. So I'll pause here for seconds for you to staring their faces. And then the community science team, including myself and Gloria. So please come talk to us. And then finally, lunch options. So the lunch break is 2 hours long, and it's on your own. And the nearby options for the restaurants are available in the website, conference website. And the closest option is the Slack Cafe. And then today's brown bag lunch session is about the LGBTQ IA and the social, which will be in the Trinity. So please go check. And I think that's all for the session. And let's give the final round of applause to all the speakers of the session. Welcome to Rubin. Thank you.